Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I'm with Ben Pickard, and we're talking about burnout. We both share some of our stories about being burnt out as a gym owner. We talk a little bit about how to avoid burnout and the steps to take once you're in burnout. And so, if you want to learn how to better navigate the nasty feeling of being burned out, this is a great episode for you. So keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. Before we jump in, quick reminder that we're going to Toronto for 2 whole days for an amazing Unicorn Society retreat, and you're invited. It's March 21st and 22nd. We have, at this point of recording this, maybe a handful, I think less than 5 spots left for people who are not Unicorn Society members to join. And so this is your last call to get our early bird rate. Our early bird rate ends on February 10th. So if you're listening to this before February 10th, go ahead right now, click the link down in the show notes. I think it's going to direct you over to Instagram, or you'll DM us the word Toronto. Just let us know that you want to come, and we'll get you all the information and save you a spot before we run out. But come join us 2 whole days to learn with me and the rest of the Business of Unicorns team. We're going to be talking about sales and marketing, and you don't want to miss it. Don't want to miss it. Ben, I'm excited about Toronto. How are you feeling about it?
I'm super excited. I'm pumped for coming to Canada. As I've said many times, retreats are one of the highlights of the year for me. I'm stoked.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if they weren't so much damn work to put together and they weren't so friggin' expensive to run, I would do retreats all the time. It's just so fun to bring together a community of badass gym owners, truly and really, and get to see each other face to face, get to work on our businesses, share great ideas, have meals together, hang out together. I mean, it's truly the highlight of our years. And we only get to do it twice a year. And so, anyway, I hope you all can join us. We're looking forward to it. How else is your 2025 going so far, Mr. Pickard?
It's going great. We were just chatting before this. My workouts are going awesome, and I feel really good about it. I signed up for this awesome continuing education course that officially starts tonight, as of recording this tonight.
Yep.
I'm really excited about it. It's about bigger finance in fitness business, which is an area I've got a gap to close. And overall, life is good despite the mountain of snow that I've got in Guelph, Ontario.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. Life is good. I think I've mentioned before on this podcast that I'm really honing on building, hilariously enough, new health and fitness habits in 2025 is going to be my year of health. And so I'm doing all kinds of fun new things, including starting to do some healthy meal prepping, which I haven't done in a lot of years. And so that's been really fun. I bought a new meal prepping book, which is a blast. I also love cookbooks. So many fun personal development-y things I'm working on right now, which I'm sure we'll share in podcasts in the future. But for now, it's just kind of fun to plot and plan new habits in my life.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Well, that is actually a very good segue to what we're talking about today. One of the topics, the thing we want to talk about today is burnout. We want to talk about burnout. We want to talk about how do you successfully manage and lead a small business like a gym, which is very time consuming. You wear so many hats. You're pulled in many directions. You're kind of expected as a gym owner to kind of be a Jack or a Jill of all trades. You have to know a little bit about finance and marketing and sales and HR and legal and fitness and nutrition and you name it. The list is friggin' endless. You have to know a little bit about a lot. And because we're pulled in so many directions, burnout is so rampant. This is not just true for gyms. In fact, I'll share you a stat, which is that 42% of small business owners say they've been burned out in the past month. That's almost half of business owners, when surveyed, small business owners say that they've been burned out in the last month. 24% report that they're currently experiencing burnout at the time of being surveyed. It's kind of fucked up.
That's 2/3 of business owners are either burnt out or have been burnt out in the last 30 days. That's most of them.
That's most. It's most, right? And so, Ben, let's talk about this a little bit, because I know you have we both have experience with this, of course. If you've ran a small business for more than a week, you've experienced some sort of burnout, honestly. But let's talk a little bit about our personal experiences to kick things off. What about you?
Yeah. What about my burnout? So pre-COVID, my gym had a very nice rocket ship growth, which looks really good on a spreadsheet. It doesn't look so good when you're looking at what my calendar looked like at that time and stress levels, let alone anything else. Yeah, we went from like essentially zero to $750,000 in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. It was
Yeah.
just like a lot very quickly.
Yes.
So don't get me wrong, from an optimizing from money standpoint, we were winning. But for optimizing for anything else, or even money and anything else,
Yes.
I remember like a friend wants to get together and it's like, cool, I'm available 3 Tuesdays from now at 7 p.m. Just the worst. And luckily, you
Yep.
know the whole story, but luckily I had you in my corner to help me learn how to manage this. And I was actually saying earlier today that like my gym is running like, honestly, it feels like it's the best it's ever been in the last, I don't know, couple of years. And it took me a while to realize what was going on. It's like, why am I unhappy? Why am I tired?
Yeah.
I'm sure you noticed the signs of burnouts in me ages before I did. Um, and I've been thinking about this actually because it was top of mind yesterday. I'm intentional about the phrasing. It's not I got burnt out, it's I burned myself out
Yeah.
because I committed to those things.
Yep.
I said yes to them. I do believe everything is a choice. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek because it bothers me that I believe that a little bit. Sometimes nice to have somebody to blame, but
Of
it's not
course.
yourself. Um, and yeah, I just did too much too fast. And to your point, I had to know all of the things you mentioned and more, at least at a level of like what appears to be competence. And that just means like you're on all the time, especially when your gym opens at 6 a.m. And I know some gyms open at like 5 a.m. Those are the real, ooh. And then
Yeah.
you're open till like 8 p.m. And people expect that if they can train, they can also like complain about stuff and ask you questions and phone you on your personal cell phone because I didn't know enough to get a business number on day one. Again,
Yep.
these are all the things that I did to burn myself out. And I was quoted on the Lift the Bar podcast, and I think I still mean it. Like, I wasn't being facetious. Like, I would have sold my gym for $50. I was done. I was
Yeah.
so done. The reason my wife started helping out at the gym was because I was going to lose my mind. She's like,
Yep.
I can coach part time so you don't have to because it's worth it for me to coach 5 or 6 hours a week for you to not be miserable 7 days a week.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. We've all been there. And the fact that you had the wherewithal to recognize and accept that you needed help, the wherewithal to recognize you needed help, and then were able to like actually accept it, right, is huge. That's often how people, I mean, maybe it wasn't as smooth as I just made it sound, but
For
you
the
did.
people who were listening to this, I was grimacing as he said that. I'm sure it took me like a year to actually come to
Yeah.
terms with that. It wasn't like, oh my God, I need help and I'm receptive to it.
Yeah.
I was fighting my gold tooth and nail.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, you got there, right? I think is the end point is that often how we get out of burnout, one of the ways, and we'll talk more about strategies for avoiding it in the first place. But when you're in it, one of the ways to get out of it is to actually recognize that you need help and then find the right kind of help, right? Because sometimes you're stuck because you have overcommitted, because you have been in a silo of your own thinking and decision making. You need that external, either inspiration or voice of reason, right, or a kick in the pants, right, to help you break the cycle of just completely overwhelming yourself. Yeah, I mean, I have so many stories of this over the years. I think the most recent one that comes to mind, I think, won't be a surprise to a lot of listeners. The last time I really truly felt like I was burnt out and like I really was like, do I even want to do any of this anymore? Was right around COVID. Right around COVID. I think it was just, it was a stressful time for all of us. So there's an anomaly, right, in some ways. But really the things that stress me out about COVID are things that we all experience all the time, right? That period of time for me was about having to make 1,000,001 decisions that all felt so important. And many decisions we had to make around COVID all felt existential. Like every decision really fucking matters, right? From like, what cleaner do I buy to can I find enough toilet paper to how am I going to fix my HVAC system to make it fit the regulations of our local city or whatever, to what staff do we keep and how do we do layoffs. And at that time, we were also at MFF struggling with having to close our Bowery, our second location, because the landlord wasn't working with us. So stressful. Well, at the same time, Business for Unicorns was fully up and running during those years and was mainly staffed by me. So at that moment, I was still running Business for Unicorns, which was obviously a very different operation back then, and was pulled back into MFF to manage a lot of these decisions and projects and try to figure out what's coming next. And that was for me just a recipe of completely overextending myself. So the similarity to your story here is that I just said yes to too many things. I said, yes, I'll help with that. Yes, I'll help with that. Yes, I can keep doing that. And there was nothing I said no to. It was a boundaryless time because I thought that's what was required. And I don't know, looking back, maybe it was, but it wasn't sustainable, right? Saying yes to all of those things I could maybe do for a few months, right? But I think by the time, late 2021, early 22 came around, I was toast. Right. By the time we were actually reopened at MFF in New York City, and our other location had been closed, I was toast. Like I just needed to actually walk away, or else, I just didn't look forward to coming to work every day. And so I think, to kind of zoom back out from my own experience, I think the overlap we're seeing here, some of the signs that burnout is coming, some of the signs that you're about to burn out, pull back, are things like mental and emotional exhaustion, right? Like, feeling super stressed for weeks, days, if not weeks at a time. What are some other symptoms you saw, Ben, that clued you in that burnout was coming?
Yeah, the biggest one for me was the feelings of resentment and dread and being ineffective. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I was carrying, I don't know, I felt like I was Atlas carrying the world, even though I'm
Yep.
aware I wasn't carrying the world, but it felt that way to me. And it was like I dreaded going back into work. Actually, kind of like I realized I was burnt out when over COVID. I was like strangely happy that I didn't have that much stuff to do, but I didn't have that much
Mm,
stuff to do because my business was on fire. So
yep.
it's like, well, the firefighters are here and hopefully it doesn't all burn down, but I guess I can just sit here and watch.
Yep.
Obviously, I did my best, but like there was like only a couple hours work to do when you have a fraction of the clients that you're used to dealing with.
Yep.
And then add in, sleep problems. And I'm not like that angry a person, but one of the symptoms is angry outbursts, especially in meetings.
Yeah. I find that was true for me as well. Like, I think I like to say this, and in the comments, anyone I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd like to think that I'm known for for being pretty steady. Like, I'm not someone who has huge emotional swings. I'm usually pretty steady, even during times of real stress and anxiety when other people are spinning and spiraling. I'm usually the one that's pretty grounded. And
Big time.
yeah, okay, good. I'm not delusional. And during this time when I saw burnout coming, I found myself getting a little snippy with people, where I just like kind of my patience was the first thing to go. Cause I don't think inherently a patient person. I've had to work at being patient. And so I think during those times when you're super stressed and burnout is on the horizon, those things you have to work harder on just get even harder. And I was just really not patient with people at a time when patience was critical. And so I'm sure I ruffled some feathers and pissed some. I know I did during that time, which is, I'd like to think, unusual for me. you and that's a good sign that things are coming. So, okay, so now let's just kind of keep the ball moving forward, which is, we talked a little bit about why gym owners experience this, that we all do. All small business owners experience burnout. We shared our own stories. We talked about some signals that burnout might be coming. So now let's just chat about, like, what the fuck do you do about it? So you find yourself at a place where burnout is upon you. You're starting to really feel all the things we were talking about, and you recognize this in yourself. There's a million things to do, but let's just pick a few things that have worked for us. What about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I've learned about this has actually come from you, and I believe you've learned it from Dr. Boyatzis, and it's four
Yeah.
categories of mindfulness, hope, compassion, and play.
Yeah.
So there's many things you can do, but they fit under mindfulness, hope, compassion, and play
Yeah.
to kind of bring you back from burnout.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's I'll attribute this to so Dr. Boyatzis, Dr. Richard Boyatzis, he has an author he often writes with, Annie McKee. Their, I think, probably most famous book, I think this is fair, is Resonant Leadership. Resonant, like resonance. And so for all of you book nerds out there, this book probably came out, I don't know, maybe 10 plus years ago at this point, but it's a great one. They also have a workbook that goes with it called Becoming a Resonant Leader. It's been a favorite for me and Mark for many years, in part because they really address the fact that being a leader in any context creates this kind of chronic stress environment, especially being a leader in a small business where you wear so many hats. And they've identified these kind of four categories of things that help you really kind of avoid burnout in the first place, if we're being honest. This is even a thing you do. It'll help you get out of it. But more importantly, these four things actually help you avoid being burned out in the first place. So let's go through them a little bit again. So the first thing you mentioned is mindfulness. So just say more, Ben, about what does this look like, or what could this look like for anyone who, wants to avoid being burned out or climb out of burnout?
Yeah, well, it starts with self-awareness, knowing
Yeah.
like what do you need to be mindful about. I feel like mindfulness is one of those words like fitness that kind of gets, this is my perception of
Yeah.
it, it gets tossed around of like what is good fitness. It's like, well, it's fit to do the task. But there are specific behaviors before we get too philosophical about the etymology of the word. One of them is to start a meditation practice, which I say a little bit tongue in cheek because that's something I've had resistance to for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, the second one is to start a daily reflection journal, which I can actually attest. I started this about a year and a half ago, and I think I'm probably 10 to 20% happier and less stressed just because of the 2 minutes a morning I spend writing in my journal, and it's the
Yep.
most bent journal ever. I'm not writing a story; I'm like bullet pointing it.
Yep.
Making time for self-reflection in one-on-ones and team meetings. And there's lots of tools for this type of thing that you can do, but like even quarterly reviews that we recommend start with a self-reflection and then kind of evaluating another or giving feedback to another, but starts with reflection.
Yep.
um, Noticing and naming how you're feeling, ideally at least once a day, is huge. Being able to be you've talked about this before and I'm going to butcher it, so please interrupt me whenever.
Yeah.
Having a better vocabulary to describe your emotions. It's not I'm
Yeah.
angry, I'm happy, I'm sad. Like there's much more descriptive words that we can use in there, because sometimes I'm not angry. I'm actually just frustrated or being impatient or maybe a little bit anxious about something, and being able to name it is super
Yeah.
useful. And I
Yeah.
say this like as the typical kind of jockish straight white guy who like isn't in touch with his feelings, or at least wasn't years ago and has now learned how to like label
Yeah.
and accept them and change them.
Yep. Yeah. Good for you. And you nailed it. That was a great description. Yeah. I think
Thank you.
that was it. And I think, all of this whole mindfulness category is really, you put it in like, maybe this is biblical terms. It's like, it's know thyself, right? Know how you work, right? I mean, we all have feelings every day, all day. That's how we are hardwired to be. And for you to be more in touch with how you feel about yourself and other people and the world around you is really useful to avoiding burnout or getting out of burnout, because you know what makes you tick, right? And I think, obviously many of you know that I'm a big nerd about mental health, and one of my areas of study is mental health at work. And there's a definition of mental health that I've been a big fan of recently. This is by a woman named Dr. Lisa Damore. She really studies mental health for teenagers, and she says mental health, or being mentally healthy, is really about two main things. It's having the appropriate feelings given the situation, and the ability to manage those feelings, right? And so mindfulness is about that, right? Is a tool for mental well-being and mental health, right? If you can learn to have the right feelings given the situation, and when you don't have the feelings that are appropriate for the situation, that you learn how to manage them in a way that mediates that, right? So let's just say that, you're in a meeting and someone does something that really shouldn't piss you off to that extent, but every time they do it, you actually want to punch someone through a wall, right? We can all agree that's not like the ideal feeling to have given that situation, right? So the question then becomes, well, how do you manage your feelings when that happens? Do you have the tools to do it? Do you learn how to take the deep breaths, or go walk away, or have a conversation about it? Or what skills do you have to manage your own feelings? I think mindfulness is one of the tools we use to get better at knowing ourselves, handling, naming, managing our emotions. So I think these all go hand in hand, right? These go hand in hand.
Yeah,
Sorry, that was a bit of a
no,
tangent, but
I thought that was awesome. What I kind of heard in there, kind of as someone who hasn't read that researcher's work, is kind of the gap between the action and the reaction. It's not what happens, but how you respond to it. And if you can actually manage that gap so it's more than a microsecond and you jump into, like you said,
yeah,
punching people through a wall in rage, that you can actually be like, oh, like, why is that landing with me that way? And there's something to
yes,
explore, and getting curious with yourself. You can probably have a much more
yeah.
positive reaction than violence.
Because that's it. Because the thing about mental health is that it's not about being happy all the time. Right? Being mentally healthy is not synonymous with ongoing happiness. Right? You're going to have negative emotions. The question is just like, is the emotion you're having appropriate given the situation? Is that how you want to feel when that thing happens? And if not, what can you do about it? What tools do you have? What skills do you have at your disposal to change that? Right? That happens to me on a regular basis, where I'm like, you know what? I am so fucking pissed about this thing. I don't want to be. Like that's not how I want to feel when this thing happens. So what can I do to change my relationship with this thing to make sure that I can have like the appropriate emotions at the appropriate time for myself? I'm going to put like appropriate in air quotes that you all can't see, but and it's going to be different for each person. There's not a right or wrong here, but we can all agree that wanting to punch someone in the face in a meeting is not a feeling anyone else wants to have, as an example, right?
And to your point about us not being happy all the time, like let's flip that coin.
Yeah.
Like, we're all pretty much guaranteed to experience some version of tragedy in our life.
Yes.
Like, it would be possibly incredibly unhealthy to be in a period of extreme happiness when a loved one passes away. Like
Yes.
it would be normal. I'd find it odd if you weren't like
Yes.
mourning.
Exactly. That's what we talk about. We say like, part of being mentally healthy, right, is the ability to have the right emotions given the situation, or the appropriate emotions given the situation, and the ability to manage those emotions, to have some, conscious control over deciding, how you want to feel, right? And I think that that's exactly what therapy does for most people, right? Is helps them build new connections for their situation and their environment and their feelings. But let's keep going, because mindfulness is just one piece of this. Maybe we'll not get through many others, but let's at least share one or two more kind of buckets from this. So hope was the second one.
Let's talk about it. So behaviors to help you flex your hope muscles. I like that. One is to write a hopeful vision for your company, which I love. I never actually labeled this stuff as hope, but I like all these things.
Yeah.
The second one is to do the same thing, write a hopeful vision, but for your life.
Yeah.
Like even more powerful, we are not our work. Our work is a thing that we do and can change over time. Like, and I say that as someone who loves the work that I do, but I'm aware that like at some point in my life, it may change. I hopefully will live a very long time so I can experience those changes. Here's one that's near and dear to the heart, because we do it at literally every meeting, to the point where it almost gets old, but we still do it because there's value in it, is starting each team meeting and one-on-one meeting with celebrating successes. So we call the term gains, from Dan Sullivan's Gap in the Game, but it's as easy as just putting gains at the top of every meeting agenda, and everyone has to share a win before you dive in. Works as a great segue too. Asking your clients to create hopeful goals for their fitness. You're probably doing this in a strategy session or consultation process anyways, but there is huge power in there to give clients hope so they don't feel like they're constantly failing.
Yeah.
And asking your team to create a hopeful vision of their personal and professional growth. Obviously, we can only lead a horse to water. We can't force people to take the next step in their path, but chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you believe in supporting the people who work with you, not just using them as like factory robots to pump out factory fitness.
Yeah. I think that's a great list of really practical things you can do when you want to connect more with hope. And the reason hope is one of the kind of four pillars here of avoiding burnout is that hope gets us out of the present moment, right? Gets us out of the present, often spiral or stuckness, and gets us thinking about a positive, brighter tomorrow, right? And to be hopeful about the future is really one of the most powerful feelings you can have, right? I mean,
lit up just talking about it.
Yeah, you were smiling as you were talking about it. I mean, not for nothing. I mean, it's so powerful. I mean, one could say that presidencies in the United States were won on the promise of a hopeful future. And Barack Obama, had the word hope underneath all of his posters, underneath his face, for a reason, right?
Well,
Is that
in Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which was incredibly dark.
Yeah.
He was talking about he could tell which people in the like POW camps were going to die next, because they were the people who smoked their cigarettes, because the cigarettes were the currency. And by smoking your currency, it means you've given up hope. And it was like, he labeled like those people gave up hope, they're next to go. And we're talking like the darkest possible scenario a human could be in.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that kept the people going or not.
Yeah. It's a powerful thing. And I think often in business, we don't take enough time to do that kind of future visioning, that kind of hopeful thinking about how well could things go? What's the brightest future we can chart for ourselves? So I think that's a really important one. All right. In the interest of time, let's do this. I know there's two other categories we could talk about. Maybe we'll have another podcast where we come back. But the other, just to wrap things up, compassion is another really powerful thing to try to wrap your arms around in all the time, to avoid burnout or get out of it. That sense of, caring about others, and play, the sense of like spontaneity and creativity. Like those are the four things that you can always wrap your arms around, and bake into your day, like bake them into your processes and the way you do things, to make sure that you're always connecting with that sense of hope, that sense of compassion, that sense of play, that mindfulness. Those are the four kind of, things that at least the research shows are really helpful to avoiding burnout. One other kind of practical thing I'll say, just as this resonates with my own experience, is once you're in burnout, I think one of the most important tools to get out of it is boundary setting. I know we're not going to have a ton of time to dive into this topic at great length, but I think you all know what I mean by that, right? Which is boundary setting is creating, is defining the conditions under which you're willing to be treated. Right, defining the conditions, right, and so I think that oftentimes, and often defining those conditions under which you are willing to be treated starts with you. In both Ben's example and my example, we're the ones who mistreated ourselves. we're the ones. I'm sorry to throw you under the bus with me, but we're both under there.
Right.
Yeah, we're the ones who didn't have clear boundaries with ourselves for what we were willing to do or not do, or the kind of sleep we needed, or the kind of whatever the case may be. And so I think that boundary setting is not just about holding your arm up and pushing someone away. It starts with yourself. What boundaries can you set with yourself? What expectations can you have with yourself for the way you want to be treated? Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, just like, I know it's been said before, but our own internal dialogue says things to ourselves that we wouldn't be caught dead saying to another person.
Yeah.
And it totally is the can't serve from an empty cup thing. And like, I know this horse has been beaten to death, but it still is a message I think people need to hear. It's even more important when you're in a leadership role, because your team is going to pick up on your energy. They're going to know you have a good or bad day the minute you walk through the door. You don't want them feeling like they're walking on eggshells. If nothing else, like, we've chosen to be in a leadership position, even if we don't feel like we want it anymore because we're fried. Like, not to be on a high horse here, but like, I feel like we have a responsibility to do a good job of this because we're people who have others' livelihoods in our hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that with leadership comes a kind of responsibility to lead by example and go first often, right? And I think that means showing people how to take care of yourself. And if you're not taking care of yourself, right, it's going to be hard to inspire other people to do the same. And so I think that's a great note to leave it on. So thanks, Ben. Great conversation. We got deep here today. We got deep talking about burnout.
If
it's a good topic.
Like this, like, let us know, because then we'll talk more about this type of thing. It's I find this incredibly interesting and have, probably more mistakes to share than lessons. But yeah, if this is a thing that's resonating with you, like, please let us know so we can keep pulling this thread.
Yeah, 100%. I think topics like burnout are critical. We're all going to experience it, and we need to have some tools to navigate it. So thanks for sharing your story, Ben.
Thanks, you.
Listeners, final reminder, our early bird ends on February 10th. So if you're listening to this before February 10th, go click the link in the show notes and let us know you want to come to Toronto with us. Again, the dates are March 21st and 22nd. This is your last chance for our special early bird rates. After that, the rates go up if we even have any more spots left. So come join us in Toronto. Hope to see you there. Thanks again, Ben. See you on the next one.
Thank you.